I rewrote the entire railway series. No, I don't mean that I took the stories and changed up some events. No, I mean that I wanted a copy of the series, and the only logical option is to print it, right? Right. Well, I don't have a printer, and nor do have the permission or knowledge to use one. But what I've learned in first grade is how to write. So I did the only second most logical thing. I took a pen and wrote 230 plus pages of written text. But that got me thinking. When you write this much material of a certain book or a certain series, you start to realize that you know a lot of stuff about it. Because as our physics teacher would say, what comes through your hand comes through your mind. So with this knowledge in me, I decided that it would be great to make this video, since there I'm probably the only person with the most random knowledge of facts from the railway series that you will ever see. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Number 1. The railway series has been mostly known that the engines in it, whether they insult each other or not, always use clever insults and never swear. Well, that is in case of every single other engine, except for good old Grandpuff. Good old Grandpuff, after Falcon derails in Bulldog, decides to call him a young idiot. Number 2. In the story of Woolly Bear, Thomas insults Percy with the words, "green caterpillar with red stripes." Now this insult did not come from Thomas's head, but rather from the head of Wilbur Daughtry, years before the story was written. You see, after Clarence Reginald Dalby illustrated his 10th book, which came to be his last, that is Percy the Small Engine, Mr. Audrey got so pissed at how the illustrations looked that he flat out ended the contract with Dalby then and there and decided to comment on his Percy illustrations as he looks like a green caterpillar with red stripes. Speaking of Reginald Dalby's illustrations in Percy the Small Engine, one of the weirdest illustrations ever appears in the story Percy and Harold. When Percy's driver stands on his cab, he looks extremely tall. How tall, you may ask? Well, after finding some calculations on the internet of how high Percy's basis, Trojan, is, and converting that, and then measuring with a ruler and converting that, I was able to find out that Percy's driver is 2.39 meters tall. Number 4. Percy was the station pilot at the Tidmouth, the biggest station on the railway, for quite some time, but it is not even shown how long it really was in the books. He became the station pilot there in Book 5, and it ended in Book 11. It would seem that out of all engines, Duck was there the longest. But actually, between Book 5, Troublesome Engines, and Book 11, Percy the Small Engine, around 30 years passed, between 1925 up to 1956. Percy really did his fair share of work at the yard. Number 5. Thomas and the railway series author Wilbur Audrey canonically know each other, because in the opening verses of Tank Engine Thomas Again and Tramway Engines, they both have little conversations. Neat. Number 6. In James the Red Engine's opening, there is mention that the railway is nationalized now. Nationalization of the British railways took place in 1948. However, James the Red Engine, although published in 1948, the events of this book take place around the 1920s. Speak of a continuity error. Speaking of continuity errors, number 7. In the illustrations of Tank Engine Thomas again in Thomas and the Guard, there is a sign saying read about a certain book. And this certain book would not be published until the 40s, yet the stories take place when Thomas is new to the branch, around the 1920s. Number 8. You know those little thingies, I forgot how they are said in English? Like, for instance, if you want to write in maths 2 times 4 plus 5, and you want the result to be 18, and not, not 13. So, next to 4 plus 5, you write those things. Yeah, I forgot how they're called. Forgive me, I'm not that good at English. But these were actually used pretty commonly in the beginning of the Railway series to display additional information. However, their usage very much dwindled after Book 5. In the story Henry and the Elephant, they are used the last time for a long time, and next they are mentioned all the way in The Missing Coach, later on in Stepney's Special, and lastly in Danger Points. Number 9. Yeah, and this one is really gonna come from the mind of the person who rewrote the series, because there are 3 letters that are unused in the titles of books. These letters are X, Q, and Z. Number 10. Now this one is again coming from a person that rewrote the series, but I only realized that mistypes in the books only occur after like book 19. Now I could be wrong here and just be completely blind for the first 19 books, but while I was rewriting, I was astonished that there were no mistypes. Number 11. When it comes to the description of pages, the longest stories in the series have 4 pages. These stories are A Close Shave and Little Old Twins. And when we speak of the shortest stories, they are sometimes smaller than just 2 pages. Look at Percy and the Trousers, Edward's Day Out, Sad Story of Henry, or one of the smaller stories is again Hello Twins. 13. Number 14. In Percy's Promise, I had the greatest time rewriting. Just look at how happy I was. Number 15. In the first illustration, Domeless Engines, the second time we see the artwork of John T. Kenny in a book. Now, interestingly, he threw in a little Easter egg in this book of him following Reverend Wilbur Awdry, the author of the Railway series, next to Clarence Reginald Dalby. Awdry is pointing at Duck saying to Dalby, "This is how you should draw Duck." 16. The first city name drop in the series is Crewe, which was name drop in The Flying Keeper. However, the first Sodor city name drop does not happen until way later in Tramway Engines, when in the story Mavis Farquhar is name dropped. And by the way, do you want to know the name of the island on which the stories take place? Yeah, you have to wait until freaking Grandpa to know that it's named Sodor. 19. In James and the Top Hat, James and Edward stop at an unnamed station while starting from Tidmouth and heading for Knapford, which is Thomas's Junction. Where exactly is this station? Number 20. Folk songs have been very much referenced in the Railway series in stories such as Thomas Goes Fishing, Bluebells of England, or Bowled Out. 21. According to the iOS book, in Steamroller, when Sir Handel hauls trucks and gets destroyed by George, there might have been a terrible accident there, much more terrible than we could have ever imagined. Because these stories, in fact, took place when Sir Handel was taking military wagons, the abandoned quarry up at Ward Fowl. We were very lucky, for they were empty and weren't full of old ammunition or anything like that. 22. In the Railway series, there have been only 2 characters to ever grrr. These two are Diesel and Mavis. Plus, Daisy also did a little grrrr because she added a little H at the end. I am not counting it. 23. Apparently, Audrey dropped somewhere a cocoa recipe from the Dan Coco in Flying Kipper. Number 24. Have you ever realized that a character like Harold has been insanely pushed forward by the TV series? Yeah, in the Railway series, he appears in one book, and that book is Percy the Small Engine. Talk about an underused character potential. 25. In Toad Stands By, Oliver tore Scruffy apart, but it wouldn't be without the help of an engine that you would never realize until you read the books. Yeah, Stepney. Because Doc got a tip from Stepney all those years ago when they were pulling the express when the visiting Diesel failed, to roll sand while backing down on the train firm with their wheels. Doc told this advice to Oliver, and so Stepney is kind of responsible for Scruffy's murder. Number 26. Speaking of overused characters in the TV series, Thomas has never canonically met the Narrow Gauge Dudes. I mean, you can search the entire Railway series. He has not even been mentioned in any one of those books. Although Thomas has been at Crowens Gate multiple times, even in his first story ever, when Gordon pulls the express and a huffed-up Thomas gets off at the station is actually Crowens Gate. Number 27. In Mainline Engines, Wrong Road, it is mentioned that heavy mainline tender engines are not allowed on Thomas's nor Edward's branch line because the bridges are way too, oh my god, I don't know English. Because the bridges are way too weak to hold them. There we go. However, in Tank Engine Thomas again, in the story Thomas and Bertie, James rattles through Elsbridge with a goods train. Isn't James a heavy mainline engines? Plus, in Troublesome Engines, Edward takes trucks to the quarry and Percy runs away. What the hell, Audrey? Number 28. Is Scruffy dead here or is he alive and vibing? 29. Like, have you ever noticed that none of the stories in Edward the Blue Engine are about Edward? Like, seriously. Cows is about Gordon and Henry, Saved from Scrap is about Trevor, Bertie's Chase is about Bertie, and Old Iron is about James. Number 30. James is an absolute beast in appearing in Railway series books. Being introduced in Thomas the Tank Engine, he appeared in every single book all the way up to branch line engines. He appeared more than the Fat Controller. Number 31. The Scottish twins Donald and Douglas have a very distinct Scottish accent in the twin engines. However, this accent apparently softens throughout the series and they use more of English words and less Scottish. That's being said and done, the word just, which the twins pronounce as juist, has been pronounced as juist in The Missing Coach, as just in Bluebells of England, and as juist in Donald's Duck. There are some inconsistencies. 32. Why were Stuart and Falcon silent for 17 years? 33. When we think about canonical twins, and we are asked which one came first, we obviously think of Donald and Douglas. But what is very interesting is that the book right before this, Tallyclin and Skallowy are confirmed that they are twins. Number 34. There is a World War II time skip in the Railway series. The events of Henry the Green Engine take place around 1935 and 1936. However, Toby, the tram engine, takes place in 1950 and 1951. meaning that the entirety of World War II was skipped. Now, this is not entirely the truth, because the story of Gallant Old Engine apparently takes place during the crisis of World War II, and one of the biggest reasons the Mid-Sodor Railway closed down is because the mines were stripped because of World War II efforts. And in the Island of Sodor book, there are many references to the war and how it affected the island, but still, this time skip is a little weird. Number 35. But even though this time skip is a little weird, World War II is name dropped in the form of "His Grace got killed in war," which is a line said in Grandpuff. Number 36. When Henry blocks the tunnel in The Sad Story of Henry, he actually was much more of a nuisance to the railway than we think. Because according to the iOS book and the text of the books, the illustrations are incorrect. They should have shown only one tunnel and gauntleted tracks leading into it. So Henry was actually blocking the entire main line. Number 37. Mainline Engines is a very weird title for a book for the simple reason that most of the book takes place and takes focus on characters and places on Edward's branch line. However, Audrey will never miss out on a 500 IQ explanation on why this happens. Just pause the video and read what he has to say. Number 38. When I was young and green, says Gordon and Gordon Goes Foreign. Well, actually, when Gordon was young, he would have been green because that was the color of the Great Northern Railway. By the way, Gordon does not go foreign. He's still on the land of the United Kingdom. Number 40. Gordon apparently entered London and knew that the station was King's Cross as a Great Northern Railway engine. That is mentioned in Gordon Goes Foreign. However, in the iOS book, it is stated that Gordon was never given a GNR number. These two and two together, how can an engine without a number pull a train and be identified? What the hell is wrong with this story? Number 41. As pointed out by the Unlucky Tug in one of his videos, when Thomas, in Thomas's train, leaves his train behind, he did not get that far. The TV series again overestimates this. Thomas only got as far as the Vickerstown Yard signal box. Number 42. In the story Escape and Enterprising Engines, we are shown that poor old Boko has an evil brother. If you look at the illustration of Oliver hiding on the disused quarry siding, you can see an evil Diesel trying to hunt him down. Well, that Diesel is the Diesel from Boko's class. There is only one story that fully takes place on the Cody Fell, and that is Devil's Back. Number 44. In Mountain Engines, the narrator says that Cody made the story of Godred up. Yet the iOS book provides detailed consequences that it is true. I am starting to get sick of these retcons. Number 45. Because we see Rheneas so little in the series, he was given much more focus in the books when he actually returned, in Gallant Old Engine, Mountain Engines, and Very Old Engines. However, this is not a very big chunk of stories, and so a lot of people probably think that we saw more of Rheneas without a cap in Very Old Engines, which is the book where he had the most focus, by the way, than we did with a cap. Well, I actually went in and calculated it, and he was shown without a cap 4 times. Yet with a cap, I think 21. That is 16% of Rheneas that we see without a cap. Now actually, I did the same calculation for Skarloey, and the result may shock you. It is actually more. It's 20.9% for Skarloey. 46. James says London's not Euston, while being a former LMS engine. Number 47. Bill and Ben were on Sodor long before Toby. I mean, really, they arrived in 1948 and Toby in 1951. And speaking of random Toby age problems, why is James older than Toby? James is built in 1913 and Toby in 1914. What the hell, Audrey? And speaking of Toby, in his own book, Toby the Tram Engine, he plays a crucial role in one story. And that is Toby and the Stout Gentleman. In the second story, it is Thomas who plays the role. In the third, it is James. And in the fourth, it is Mrs. Kindly. What the hell? And for number 50, we have a millennial. So let's sum it up with another millennial. In reality, Reverend Wilbert Audrey planned to end the series after book The 8 Famous Engines and Duke the Lost Engine. Twice, the publishers wanted him to continue. Well, so he did. But after Tramway Engines, there was no more convincing for poor old Audrey. Number 51. The fact that Sodor is a real place is established in the opening of Tank Engine Thomas Again, when Thomas canonically speaks to Wilbert Audrey, who of course has to be real. Number 52. Almost every book starts with the title. Almost every book opening starts with Dear Friends, or Dear and a person's name. However, in one book and one book only, Audrey uses Dear Readers. This book is Stepney the Bluebell Engine. Number 53. The first name drop on the Railway series in itself happened all the way back in Tank Engine Thomas Again opening, again when Audrey speaks to Thomas and Thomas says they have never seen anything like it, knowing that the Audrey is writing a book about him. Again, that continuity error in Tank Engine Thomas Again about the books being on a poster on the station when Thomas leaves the guard behind is the reference in a cameo of an illustration, and the first time we hear about them in the text is in the Fat Controller's Engines, the last story of Book 12. Number 54. Thomas Comes to Breakfast was a story that Audrey precisely made to make Thomas less of an E2. When Reginald Payne, the illustrator of the second Railway series book, asked if he could do Thomas the basis of an E2, he was, not very willingly, but allowed this by Audrey. But since then, Thomas has been given the treatment by other illustrators to look less and less like an E2. The flat running board, the smaller tanks, and the smaller size all contribute to that. And Thomas Comes to Breakfast was the killing blow when the sloped running board and other details of the E2 class were finally exchanged. Number 55. The Northwestern Railway lines were covered in no new ballast in the book Small Railway Engines. This ballast is supposed to be wheat killing. Now, here comes the obvious question. Why is it wheat killing? Because it is made from leady ballast. Lead is poisonous and can kill you. Damn, no wonder these dudes on this island see faces on trains when all they breathe on the stations is lead from the ballast. Gee. Number 56. All the people that complain about the missing coach, the second story of the twin engines being confusing, shut up! The missing coach was designed to be confusing for the sole reason to confuse the hell out of the Fat Controller. Why are you complaining about this? If you don't understand it, that's good for you. Because it means that Donald and Douglas at least fooled you, if not the Fat Controller. Number 57. We only ever see the Kirk Ronan branch as it was in 1865. Yeah, that is a lot of stuff that could have changed there over the years. Number 58. Speaking of years, the only drop of a year in the Railway series is in Duck and Dukes. where the year 1865 is mentioned, and because there is supposed to be a 100th birthday, we know that the year of the story is 1965. Number 59. However, years can be very well made out in paint pots and queens, because in 1953 the coronation of the Queen was held, the Little Western, because in 1968 steam was withdrawn, in 1951, when the closure of Toby's old line was did, so the Wisbech and Abwell tramway was closed, and Tom was in trouble references that, and in Little Old Twins, which takes place in 1960 because it is 95 years of Tallyclin, which is built at the same time as Skarloey, who is also 95 at this time. Number 60. We apparently see a canon map of the island of Sodor in Sleeping Beauty on the wall of the small controller's office. Number 61. The closed Toryrek mine, which Thomas fell down once, is now used for uranium, as is mentioned in the iOS book. Number 62. Why doesn't the tank engine have a face, Dolby? Number 63. 3 titles use the exclamation mark in them. These are Trucks, Hello Twins, and You Can't Win. Number 64. Edward's crew has names, no way! Number 65. The Fat Controller's real name is only ever mentioned once in the series, and that is when Duck tries to shut Diesel up in Pop Goes the Diesel. Number 66. Henry II, or Henry as rebuilt to a Stanier Block 5, is annoyed by Henry I, or Henry as the flawed Gresley design, events told by Percy of him being stuck in the tunnel and Percy takes the plunge, confirming that Henry II is still the same engine as Henry I, although heavily rebuilt. Number 67. The Thomas and Gordon alliance, established in Down the Mine, has never been broken because they actually never met afterwards. Yeah, they have. But are those even meetings? Like the cameo here in the close shave and them being next to each other fairly close on the flatbeds in the Fat Controller's engines. I may have missed another cameo maybe, but they have not really met afterwards. Number 68. Audrey is Dr. Disrespect of Mr. Publishers. In the foreword of Oliver the Western Engine, he says that they are very stern men because they did not want to call the book Little Western Engines, and says that if Oliver misbehaves, he'll send Mr. Skay and Ward onto him. Good lord, how did this get through in publishment? And in the foreword of the complete collection, he says that Mr. Edmund Ward had to have quite an imagination to see some future in his scripts of Edward's Day Out, The Sad Story of Henry, and Edward and Gordon. And number 69. Percy makes a penis joke about Henry in Percy and the Trousers. How did this slip through the production?
Funnel's cold, he would puff. I want a scarf, I want a scarf. Rubbish, Percy, said Henry one day. Engines don't wear scarves. Engines with proper funnels do, said Percy in his cheeky way. You've only got a small one, Henry snorted. He was proud of his short, neat funnel.
Number 70. Water break. Severe overpressure in your bladder / tank alert. Go use a toilet or an expector. Yeah, anyway, kinda cool that the fireman made the fire and Thomas goes fishing. Number 71. The Fat Controller knows how to fry fish, but Thomas's crew does not know how to fry a fish. Number 72. Donald's and Douglas's crews are related. Go read the iOS book, it's full of random bullshit. Number 73. In the series, there are many harbors mentioned in the iOS book, but we only see 4 of them in illustrations. The Knapford Harbor in Percy the Small Engine and 8 Famous Engines, and probably in some other cameos that I missed. Tidmouth Harbor in Henry the Green Engines, it is mentioned in the Twin Engines by passing, and it is seen in an illustration in the Flying Kipper. We see Brandham Harbor in mainland engines, and Kirk Ronan Harbor as it was in 1865 in very old engines. But we never see Arlesbrook Harbor, the river harbors at Farquhar and Elsbridge, or the Sudbury or Harwich harbors. I am pretty sure that there is a harbor at Harwich, but I could be wrong there. Number 74. Speaking of Farquhar, I have been actually pronouncing it wrong this entire video, because it is actually meant to be pronounced as Farquhar.
A fat controller sells the hay to hill farmers who want winter feed for their stock. At this time of year, when Percy comes back from the harbour, he stops where they have been cutting. The men load up his empty wagons, and he pulls them to Farquhar.
Number 75. Boco's wheelbases is Boco. Number 76. The number on the diesel in Bolt Out is impossible. British Railways have not numbered their diesels like that at any point in that time. Number 77. The first real engine in the series is not City of Truro, contradict to popular belief, but it is actually Toby. Yeah, Toby, the Great Eastern Railway J70 class number 129. He was the first engine from the first point that it was real. Number 78. And speaking of Toby being a J70, the engines who replaced J70s on the Wisbech and Upwelf tramway were actually of Mavis's class. Kind of ironic that Mavis actually went to replace Toby at the Farquhar Quarry as well. Sorry, Farquhar Quarry. Number 79. The Fat Controller would never scrap his engines. Bullshit! He actually did. The coffee pot vertical boiler engines used on the Tidmouth, Knapford and Elsbridge Light Railway, and later on after amalgamation on the Farquhar Quarry branch, from Farquhar up to the quarry, have all been scrapped. And not only that, they were built by Sir Topham Hatt himself. He scrapped or knew of the scrapping of his own engines. Number 80. However, on a lighter note about the first Fat Controller, he actually built and designed the bridge over the Walney Channel. Number 81. The Stephen in Toby and the Stout Gentleman will once become the Fat Controller, the third. As mentioned in the iOS book. Number 82. Sir Handel, the engine, was named by Sir Handel II, the owner, in the honor of Sir Handel I, which is the father of Sir Handel II, and Sir Handel I died in 1950, leaving the railway to Sir Handel II, who had to buy Sir Handel and Peter Sam to keep the railway running so that he could fulfill the dreams of Sir Handel I, the father of Sir Handel II. Number 83. Gordon got his name from a naughty boy on Wilbert Street who harassed Christopher Audrey when they were kids. Talk about an influential harasser. Number 84. Now this one's gonna shock you. Gordon's crew can canonically write. I know. Absolutely shocking. These dudes can write because they could sign autographs in 8 Famous Engines. No other crew has been ever confirmed to know how to write. Number 85. The Flying Scotsman does not protest when Duck says he's the second engine to go 100 miles per hour in Tenders for Henry. Yet Gordon does protest when Duck says the same thing, although in a different word order, in Domeless Engines. Number 86. James's stung nose gets red in Buzz Buzz, meaning that James has blood. Yeah, I think I may have ruined you the experience of reading the Railway series now. Well, you can't unsee it now. Hehehehe. 87. Donald and Douglas only get repainted and Stepney the Bluebell engine because they were still black when they were pulling Thomas out of the station master's house in branch line engines. Number 88. Thomas can be a push-pull. A push-pull is a train and wagon consist mostly used by coaches. And by mostly, I mean always. My English sucks today. So, the push-pull consist is that an engine is attached to its train and pulls it one way up the branch line. But the way down, it pushes it without detaching from the train at all. The driver just goes over to the last coach, stands on its rear end, and controls the engine via electronic controls throughout the entire train, while the fireman shuffles coal in for dear life in the engine itself. Thomas is therefore shown as a push-pull in the series, in Woolly Bear, when he has a red tail lamp on his front end, and also in Down the Mine, when he teases Gordon, the smoke from his funnel is actually coming the other way, and the same is true in the next illustration of the same story. Number 89. We'll get back to the pronunciations. Rheneas is actually meant to be pronounced as Rheneas.
Then we be on the scrap heap, my engine, and don't you forget it. Thank goodness Rheneas is coming home.
Number 90. Contradict to popular belief, the Peel-Godred electric line does actually appear in the series once. And that is in the first illustration of Danger Points, when Donald offloads Cody onto the rack rails. However, the line here is shown without electric wires. Number 91. The series loved name-dropping places in the UK. Places like London, Doncaster, Crewe, or the place that I forgot how it's called when Mrs. Kindly was being healed after Mrs. Kindly's Christmas, etc. However, outside the United Kingdom, there has only really been 2 places name-dropped. These are both in Duke the Lost Engine, when in the opening, South America is name-dropped for the engine that survived 30 years in the jungle there, and in Grandpa, Duke says that Stanley is an American, meaning that he has to name-drop America in the process. However, outside the Railway series books, in the iOS book, there are other places name-dropped, such as Switzerland, Norway, Denmark, Scotland, Ireland, and Iceland. Number 92. Now look at this illustration. It should seem fairly normal to some of you, but James is a 460. And the beam supporting the shed roof is drawn right in front of Henry's buffer beam, so the minute he moves, he demolishes the shed. It is in pieces now. 94. How tough ducks crew finish railway school when they boil an egg in duck's whistle and are surprised when it breaks it? Number 95. When accidents are really similar to each other, it is usually getting kind of boring. Well, that is if they repeat once. But what if they repeat themselves 2 times? Yeah, it is 3 times that carts have been caught on the line and bashed to smithereens. And that is in Percy and the Trousers, Useful Railway, and Ghost Train. 96. Why on earth do you keep a 4-meter mirror at Farquhar? Number 97. What drugs did Dolby give Percy for those massive eyes? Number 98. Did you know that the fat clergyman owns a steamroller called Satan? Satan! He's a reverend! Number 99. When the fat clergyman gets splashed, Audrey, or the thin clergyman, does not. And when the fat clergyman is angry, Audrey laughs at him. That's what I call level 100 friendship. And number 100. In small railway engines, Bert is canonically 77 years old and Mike is a toddler. What do I mean by that? Well, Mike's basis, River Mite, was built in 1964. Assuming Mike was built at the same time, that would make him 1 year old at the time of small railway engines taking place. Number 101. Gordon is the greatest liar of all time. And that is particularly great in James and the Express. When he makes up a loop line to hide his true failure, because he cannot pull the train from the Fat Controller's words, and tries to fool James, who is new to the railway and doesn't know that there is in fact no loop line. And that is why then James has to pull the Express. But he did in fact fool James, so I think that makes him a good liar. Number 102. The Aylesbridge Bridge is made from Farquhar stone. It was made as a demonstration of the stone's quality, and because the bridge stuck for so long with minimal repairs, Farquhar stone got great acceptance on the market. Number 103. Now, if you think of Toby's character, you probably go something like, wise old grandpa who just doesn't give a shit. But how much can Toby not give a shit? Well, in Mavis, when Mavis stucks in the lane, Toby refuses to help her. Now this seems normal, until you realize the sheds are 50 meters from the lane. Number 104. Every book in the series is published with a 1 year gap in between, except for the 3 railway engines and Thomas the Tank Engine, a 3 year gap there, Thomas the Tank Engine and James the Red Engine, a 2 year gap there, and Duke the Lost Engine and Tramway Engines, again a 2 year gap there. Number 105. The engine pushing Henry was supposed to be James, but a different colored dome given by Dolby made Audrey tell that it was a completely different engine just similar to James. Number 106. Now, we all know that the Flying Kipper goes to the mainland, but where exactly to the mainland? Well, Manchester. But how do I know it? I don't know. It isn't in the iOS book and it isn't in the Railway series, but I have heard it in several videos. So it must be true then. But where did we get this information from? Is there a second iOS book we're missing? Number 107. Now, usually a book has 1 or 2 key accidents around which it revolves. That is not the case in Oliver the Western Engine, where there are 3 accidents. I think that that's the record of the books. Number 108. The trains play? Number 109. Dear Mr. Audrey, I have a question. How the flying do you know what the bees think? Number 110. We again have to confirm that Gordon is an awesome liar in James and the Express because he seems happy in the dialogue, but on the illustrations he do be kinda pissed off. Yeah, I don't think you can fool us with it, but apparently you can fool James 24/7 with this behavior. Number 111. Trevor, Bulgy, City of Truro, and George are all well remembered and established, yet all one-offs appearing in only one story. Now, I have been criticizing Audrey a lot throughout this video, but seriously, the establishment of this honor? Like, the small railway engines were introduced in book 22, yet they were so well established that even when they barely had speaking roles later on, they appeared for a mention in enterprising engines, played a fairly big role, in Oliver the Western engine, and also had speaking roles in Duke the Lost engine. I mean, and they weren't like shoved in. These three were freaking vibing with the stories and the world taking place around them. If that doesn't show the significant world building, then I don't know what does. Number 112. The way lamps on the engines are positioned in mainline engines' wrong road suggests Edwards still pulls branch line expresses. Now, engines have their headlamps placed those ways for a reason, and the reason is called head coats. The Thomas Theories has a wonderful video on this if you want to check it out, but in short, head coats differentiate in the dark whether an engine is pulling one type of carriage or another. If it is a passenger train, a goods train, a mineral goods train, a fast goods train, an express passenger train, a royal train, or empty wagons, it all has differences in the head coats. And the head coat of two lamps on opposite ends being lit at the same time means an express. This is also confirmed by the line saying that there are two fast trains leaving at the same time. One of those has to be Edwards. So he's still doing the job he was set out from when he was built all the way back in 1896. Pulling expresses. Number 113. 57646 and 57647 are the numbers of Donald and Douglas on the BR. In real life, number 57645 was the last one of the class, making Donald and Douglas additional add-on members. 114. Now in the TV series there has been a running gag of Oliver, the engine, having another character named the same way, and that is Oliver from Jack and the Pack. However, did you know that this is the same in the Railway series? There are two engines who share the same name, and both canonically exist. And this engine is Douglas. Now Douglas is of course 57647 or number 10 or Donald's twin. However, the Talyclean Railway number 6, Douglas, who bears an extreme resemblance to Duncan, is shown on an illustration, meaning that he is canon, and that there are actually two Douglases in the series. Number 115. Stewart was, according to the iOS book, dragged to Peel Godred via traction engine from Kildane. Now this doesn't seem that weird, until you realize that he was brought to Kildane with a Northwestern Railway main line, which at the time was opened and well up and running all the way to Arlesborough. What the hell? Number 116. There are actually two members of royal families name dropped in the series. Now one of them is of course Queen Elizabeth II in Paid Pots and Queens. However, the second one is lesser known, and it is the King Godred, who was king of Alderore, Man and Dublin. He of course was a king way earlier. The first Godred was king from 979 to 989, and his grandson was king later on in the 11th century. But still, kinda neat that Cody mentioned why the Godred, the engine, was named after Godred. He was named after a real king. 117. Now, which engine do you think uses the word stick in the muds more often than the others? You may probably say, duh, Rheneas, who else called others stick in the muds? Well, Thomas. In Tank Engine Thomas again, he calls the big engines stick in the muds, and the same is true in Thomas Goes to Breakfast in Branch Line Engines, where he calls Toby and Percy stick in the muds. 118. Now, there are not many characters in the series who we can confirm that are actually Christian, but, of course, with the clear exception of the two clergymen, the thin and fat one, who are Christian because they are, clergymen, there is also one other person, and that person is Thomas's driver, who says, "God bless you, madam," to Mrs. Kindly. Number 119. Jemima is apparently deaf, yet she still hears whispering. Number 120. In Peter, Sam and the Refreshment Lady, Henry says this line, "Not bad, youngster," to Peter Sam. Peter Sam was built in 1920. Henry was built in secret, and the Fat Controller bought him in 1923, suggesting that he was finished building around 1922. Henry is younger than Peter Sam. What the hell, Audrey? Number 121. Now, most people think that the Vicar is actually a one-off, only appearing in Edward the Blue Engines Saved from Scrap. But actually, Vicar appears once more and even has a neat speaking role, and that is in Percy's Promise, because the Sunday school children that Percy brings home are actually the Vicar's Sunday School. Number 122. Doc is facing the wrong way at Wellsworth in a close shave. In reality, he should be running west from Gordon's Hill, being chased by the trucks. Number 123.
"I didn't think. You never do," said a
Number 124. There has actually been a Tugs reference in the series, and that is in the story of the twin engines, The Missing Coach.
"Tis," said Gordon. "Or ships," sniggered Henry. "Tugboat Annie," laughed Gordon. "Ha, ha, ha."
Number 125. The Fat Controller apparently knows how to rap. He swung round suddenly. "Douglas," he rapped, "why are you masquerading with Donald's tent?"
But, sir, how did you find out? Douglas. So mama to mama, you're some yama, you want to get through. I'm a superhuman in the maiden in the middle of a few says ricochet from me. I go to never say name on never demonstrate how to man the aliens of because I'm never feeling I know the haze of way for they can say I felt they be celebrating because I know the way they get motivated. I make elevated music, you make elevated music. Understand, Douglas? Yes, sir.
And 126. The only female truck in the series is on the Cody Fell Railway, and it is the truck that Lord Harry uses in Devil's Back to save the climbers. And that is just about it, folks. Now, before you go, I have a New Year's present for you all. Down below in the description of this video, you are going to find Thomas's Christmas Party, the 26 books of the Railway series written by Audrey, the iOS book, and a link to very high quality illustrations. These have been provided to me by the Old British chap through the Unlucky Tag, so thanks to them as well. You will also find 01 Salty's awesome Island of Sodor high quality map. But the second thing I want to announce you is also very important. I am a small channel and I am expecting this video to reach 50 to 60 views. I would be very delighted if I came back a week later and saw 50 to 60 comments. Please, to every one of you who came here, write a comment. There is nothing better you can do. Really, it helps out a channel a lot when you can say what you hated about the video so that I can make it better in the future. Please, even if you never comment, please write a comment on this video. Until next time, God bless you all.